Okay, everybody. So I just found out today that they're doing a special court martial on the officer of the deck of the USS Fitzgerald. Now, I make it no beef, no secret that my job in the Navy was navigation. I was quartermaster of the watch. As Dave said on his show earlier today, that the the commanding officer has a binder called the night orders, as well as there's also the standing orders, which are usually at the front of the night order binder. And upon doing some research on this, I found out that for her court martial, and again, this is a woman, a Lieutenant JG O2, very junior officer, was the officer of the deck on the night that or morning, I should say, that the USS Fitzgerald was involved in a collision. According to all the information that's come out so far, and apparently the court martial is not yet done, at least at the time of um, military.com and other news sources that I've been able to pull up here. Um, According to this, she basically ignored the captain's standing orders. She ignored her job requirements as officer of the deck for the safe navigation and the safety of the crew. So, I mean, this is just crazy. I mean, it is. Now, I'm not going to name the officer of the deck. That if you want to look it up, you can go to various news articles. They have her name. Not my place to do that at this time. But she's also being charged along with two other unnamed junior officers that were aboard. One was the tactical action officer, and one was the surface warfare coordinator. Their job was to oversee the gathering and communication of vital information to the bridge, and basically their neglect is their neglect resulted in the death, hazarding of a vessel, and negligent homicide is what they're basically being charged with. They're also going to face a joint Article 32 hearing on Wednesday. Article 32. Wow, it's been a while since I've actually looked up the UCMJ. So, all right. So, Article 32. I just need to just do the UCMJ, really. All right, let's just go to Article 32, an investigation. No charge or specification may be referred to in a general court martial for trial until a thorough investigation. So again, this is a special court martial that's going on today that they're being charged with. But they're also going to be going through an actual Article 32 hearing, a part of the investigation process tomorrow. So I want to allow them their due process, which they're allowed via the UCMJ. They're allowed to have their well, it doesn't even sound like they're having their due process, but understanding that the military operates differently is that there's more to this than there is what we know and what we're going to know because the Navy hasn't released all its findings. The Navy hasn't released all of their information yet, and that's fine. But what my concern is, and the reason why I wanted to get on this today, rather than waiting till Saturday um, for my normal thing, and I'm not even recording the audio for this. Wow. But the whole point is that effectively we have officers that are qualified watch stations that they were not should not have probably been qualified for to begin with, and then it's going to be due to, and like Dave, I agree. It's going to be due to basically less manning, and high operation tempo. Basically, meaning you're not replacing people fast enough, so you have to have more people qualified for positions that they probably aren't qualified to do. That would be like me if I was to go back into the Navy today, fresh, 18, 19-year-old, I get to the boat. Before I've qualified submarines, before I've qualified basic watch stations, they just said, all right, you're qualifying quartermaster watch without any knowledge about anything else and going to it as a navigation electronics technician. That's crazy. Uh, as a 14 Inno, a 14 XO, I can't even remember the other. NECs. I don't even think they use NECs anymore, naval enlisted codes. Um, but basically, the job function as a basic navigation operator, 14, whatever. I I was not even supposed to think about becoming quartermaster of the watch until I had qualified. Bare minimum, nav watch, auxiliary electrician forward, then quartermaster. That's basically how it worked. Because we didn't I don't blame captains for wanting, E5s and above, maybe even senior E4s, qualified quartermaster of the watch because of the responsibility that we had as for safe navigation of the submarine. I mean, it's just crazy. Most of the officers of the decks on my crew were Lieutenant JG or better, but that was after they had qualified engineering officer watch and qualified their submarine officer warfare insignia. Those are some major events that they have to go through. And then, well, actually, I think they had to qualify officer deck before they got pinned the Dolphins. But still, the fact that they basically had to be pretty much done with their Dolphins qual card meant that their ship's qual card meant that they were, in the captain's eyes, qualified enough to stand as officer of the deck to represent him so he could sleep. There were points where there were only certain officers that stood mid-watch. There were only certain quartermasters that stood mid-watch, certain chief of the watches, certain dives, with my various captains. They didn't feel confident enough for these for these, or he didn't feel confident with other officers, other quartermasters, other people to be, um, how do I wanna put it? Basically, standing watch, basically telling us that these people are the ones that I trust. I will go to sleep. I mean, I can remember times where, during watch rotations, the captain would be like, "Yeah," if we didn't have enough people to set a mid-watch team, then he would actually set a he would base his sleep schedule on when certain people were on watch together. I mean, that's how much respect you have to have of the captain, that he trusts you to do your job. He trusts you to do it. Now, I'm not saying that the captain didn't think that his officers were not qualified. I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure he felt confident enough in them. Otherwise, he would not have went to bed. But at the same time, they should have immediately, as soon as there was the slightest bit of trouble, contacted the XO and contacted the captain, and not necessarily in that order. Could have been that captain and then the XO. But basically, anytime that there's an issue, you should not be afraid to call for help to deal with the situation, especially when it comes to navigation. There's a reason why when we were going in and out of Bangor, we had a modified piloting party and we had an actual full piloting party. And depending on where we were going, that could be established, just a few hours before we surfaced, a few hours before we pulled into port. It could have been established right as we surfaced. It could, the whole piloting party is basically the maneuvering watch minus the maneuvering watch. And maneuvering watch is basically whenever we're pulling into port or pulling out to go out to sea. Now, it is just a lot of people are going to take this as, I don't think that women are qualified to do the job, and that's not the case. I totally think they are. They are capable of doing the job that we can do as men. They're capable of doing everything. I don't have a problem with females in command of ships. I don't have a problem with females standing any job in the Navy. What I have an issue with is that there's a certain amount of safety. There's a certain amount of responsibility that people have to have, and they have to understand that it's their job to make sure that the rest of the ship is safe. As Dave pointed out in his show today, we all had to read the standing orders as well as the night orders. Captains have certain, you know, command styles. Each one's different. I went through 3 captains, COs in my time. Now, granted, the last one we were in port, so there was really, while there's standing orders for watch standing for the duty officers, the barge watch, the barge quarterdeck watch, things like that. That, and then there was also topside watch. There were and stuff like that. While we were in the shipyard going through the conversion phase, basically the demoing of the boat for conversion, it was each one had their own style. Uh, Commander Koval uh, was a little bit more strict, a little bit more stern. Commander Calabrese, a little bit more laid back, but still he commanded a certain amount of respect. And Tark Tarker, I can't remember his name. Well, quick little Bing or Google search will figure that out. The whole point that I'm trying to make here is that um, whole point that I'm trying to make here is that these people failed, and they are rightfully being court-martialed. They are rightfully being, you know, for what most people see is screwed over, but the fact that they failed in their duty to do what they were supposed to do, what they were trained to do, supposedly. You can't just blame the captain and not let these people get away with it. Excuse me, sorry. Can't remember his name. Oh, wait. Uh, don't want that. Maybe this is him. Sorry, I'm trying to find out my old CO. Let's see here. Let's see. That looks like him, but I won't know until I get around there, but whatever. All right. But anyways, each officer. The whole point I'm making is each commanding officer has their own way of doing things, and I saw when I qualified auxiliary electrician forward, we were under Commander Koval. When I um, then after that, I started reading the night orders and everything like that. I saw the way he did things. And then along came Commander Calabrese, and I saw the change. There was little differences, but nonetheless, we all have a responsibility to do the job. So, let's see here. So Tuesday's court-martial proceeding is the first of several in the coming weeks that will put 5 officers on the stand for 2 Japan-based ship collisions from the summer of 2017. 2 months after the deadly Fitzgerald incident, there was the USS John S. McCain collided with a tanker in the Singapore Straits, uh, in which 17 total sailors were killed. Uh, and Officer Benson, what's his first name? Right? Yeah, Bryce Benson is also going to be subject to an Article 32 preliminary hearing on May 21st. He also faces negligent homicide, hazarding a ship, and dereliction of duty. The dates have not been finalized for the Article 32 for the relieved commanding officer of the McCain, Commander Alfredo Sanchez, who's again facing similar charges. The Navy report found that both collisions were avoidable, caused by poor seamanship and compounding errors. The Navy has acknowledged that its forward deployed 7th Fleet in Japan was stretched too thin, undermanned, overworked, and exhausted under an intense operating schedule. To meet the high operational demand, training and ship maintenances were deferred, according to a Navy review. 18 sailors have faced non-judicial punishment, or NJP, captain's mast, basically, or even admiral's mast. 10 on the Fitzgerald and 8 on the McCain, including the executive officers of both ships, the command master chief of the Fitzgerald, who was found guilty of dereliction and performance of duty. Each received a letter of punitive reprimand. Vice Admiral Joseph Aucoin, who commanded the 7th Fleet, and two top leaders below him were fired, while the Pacific Fleet commander and the commander of the Naval Surface Forces in San Diego retired early, the most senior naval officers to step down in the wake of these tragedies. This is from military.com. But, and we're just, as a sailor who took pride in the work that I did, uh, especially when it came to the navigation and safety of my shipmates, if I felt the officer of the deck was doing something unsafe, I would have called for the captain immediately. I would have called for the navigator, the XO. I would have had somebody come up. If that and if that happened, if something that negative happened, we would have to, we would need to, uh, we'd have to figure it out. Let's see here. We'd have to have the messengers involved. I mean, basically, we work as a team. We suffer the consequences as a team, but at the same time, we have to uh, know when we have to kind of buck the chain of command in an unsafe situation. Sorry, I'm just looking at all images. I want the actual list. Come on. There we go. SSG. Da, da, da. Sorry, I'm just having one of those days. History. Let's go with history then. Well, that didn't work. But anyways, a long video short, really. Or maybe I'm making a short video long. I don't know. But the whole point is that while I feel bad for these officers, while I feel bad for these young officers more so than the seasoned officers, it is one of those. I don't know. I mean, I'm having a loss of words here for this, but they knew the responsibilities of signing up for the military. They knew that uh, oh, how to put it? Him and Han here, and it's not helping me think. These officers knew their responsibilities, and they should have followed the standing orders, followed the night orders. If they felt uncomfortable with it, they should have said something. There, while yes, there might be some negative connotations with not standing a watch. Most sailors, most officers, I would think, would understand that, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable standing this watch at all at this point in time because I haven't had proper training." I would much rather know that and be like, "Okay, let's, get somebody up here." But, they don't, but at the same time, they don't, it's also frowned upon as well. So, I mean, it's one of those. I don't know. It's weird. Uh, Anyways, 6, uh, so again, just instead of trying to make a huge trying to make a huge thing about it, just, let's see here. Alright, let's see here. Yeah, I don't know, it's just crazy to think about it. Is I'm just wow. It is Oh, here we go, this is what I was looking for. COs. I knew there was a archived website somewhere that had the list of them. So, and it's really funny is there was, 2 COs, or there's 1 CO that captained both crews, the gold crew and the blue crew. One He was captain of the gold crew previously, when it was an SSBN, but then he became, CO of it during the convert after the conversion. Uh, it was pretty cool. Anyways, alright. So, anyways, I'm just rambling now. I'm gonna let it go. My point is, summary again on the special court martial. I understand it. I agree with it. I feel bad for these officers that are going through it, especially the junior officers. But they ultimately made their choices. They have to live with the consequences, and they have to live with the mistakes that they made, and they have to live with the deaths of the sailors under their command. Because again, as officer of the deck, you are the commanding officer while the captain's sleeping. You are the commanding officer when the captain is not on the bridge. You are the one in charge of the ship in lieu of the captain. So, in these surface warfare and the tactical action officers, these are the officers that are responsible for the safety of not colliding with the ship. If there's a navigation officer on the ship that's working with the quartermaster, they're also responsible. The quartermaster is just as responsible too. All of these people in the chain of command failed, and I would love to hear if they have any recordings of the bridge and the CIC. I would love to hear what they're actually saying. I hope that that information becomes public one day, or once these all the court martials and everything is settled down. I may try and see if I can get a request to the archives, the National Archives for it, because I already know this stuff's in the archive. It's just, you know, is it available for use? So that's just a quick thought, a random Tuesday edition of my stuff. But I really hope that you understand what it means to me when I find out that junior officers. Again, it's a destroyer. It's not like it's a carrier that was, collided with somebody that had an officer of the deck that was an O2 at the helm, for lack of a better term. But at the same time, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the officer of the deck was properly qualified. Was there a push to qualify as many officers of the deck before they went out to sea? And did anybody that qualified actually have actual sea time as officer of the deck? Did they have any actual time out there? Or were they just doing trainers and simulations? I know when I was qualifying quartermaster of the watch and they actually had me doing primary and secondary plot in the trainer, it didn't feel the same as when I was actually doing it on the boat in the Straits of Wonder Fuca directly in Hood Canal. It's a lot different. So, I mean, it is what it is. While I do blame them for their unwillingness to follow the letter of the standing orders, basically the letter of the law from the captain, I also know that my admonishing them means nothing because what they have to live with. And I hope that while the Navy has to punish them, I hope the Navy looks at its internal structure, what they were doing in the Seventh Fleet, and they've admitted it. But what are they going to do to fix it? What are they going to do to resolve these issues? And I know these problems don't stem from the Trump administration. I don't even think they stem entirely from the Obama administration or the Bush administration or any particular one administration. It's a collection of all of them. That whether it's a budget issue, whether it is um, an issue in the lack of leadership in the Admiralty itself, we have to fix it. We have to maintain. There are two things that I think that the Navy should be maintaining above all else: training of the crew. You cannot defer that. You cannot defer that. You know, even when we were in the shipyard and we had no way of going to sea because there are holes all over the submarine, we were still doing our monthly and quarterly not navigational training, nautical rules of the road training. We were still doing our division training. We were still doing safety training as a ship, still conducting drills. Just because we were in port didn't mean we didn't need to know what to do out at sea. Just because we were in port didn't mean we didn't need to know what we were doing for this or that. Training is paramount. And manning, actually, I have three things. Manning is the second one. If you're going to operate at a high tempo, then you need to make sure that you have enough sailors on board. And if that means they have to hot rack on the surface fleet, go for it. 3 people, 2 racks. Learn to hot rack. Enjoy it. Love it. I never had to do it. But, if that's what I had to do, that's what I would have had to do. Not a big deal. You know, that's what, you know, that's what they could have been doing. Second is maintaining of the ships. If the ships are if ships are damaged in any way, such as a collision, slow down the operation tempo of the other ships until you have full capacity again, or until you have enough coverage to do it again. You know what I mean? That is one of those things. We have to demand a certain level of integrity from our military people. You know, the loss of the life of a sailor in the line of duty is tragic. But when it could have been avoided, when it could have been prevented because of things that were out of control of the actual ship, i.e., manning, i.e., deferring training. Now, some of the deferring training is done by the captain, the XO, and all that. But there are certain things that above, like, oh, we need you to go out, so we're going to skip your training on this that you could have done in a simulator. Maybe doing a CIC and navigation team with officer decks going through, collision avoidance training in a simulation would have helped. This could have all been avoided by doing that basic training. Again, like I said, personally for me, it it didn't feel as real, and I understand that because I'm in a school building basically in a lab room, for lack of a better phrase. But still, with everything there allowing me to make those changes to do what I need to do, help me prepare for my job, help me prepare for qualifying quartermaster of the watch. And I know the captain was watching me on my days when I was training as secondary plot, when I was training as primary plot. And if he didn't feel comfortable with me doing it, I would have never qualified quartermaster of the watch. As a matter of fact, I was one of the first to be qualified with our newest navigator at the time, Lieutenant Johnson, who also had to be supervised and get qualified as navigator via the XO and the captain as well. So he was there, him, the XO, the ANAV, and the captain all stood my board, a four-person board for qualifying. Just like just like any watch station, you have a basic board to qualify. Helmsman Plainsman isn't so much a board as it is a. Actually, I think it was, but I digress. The Admiralty needs to check out, not check out. The Admiralty needs to review its internal structure, all the way from the CNO, the uh, the chief of training. I can't remember what it is, per something or other, all the way down to uh, Sync Pack. Actually, any of the Admiralty groups. So Sync Pack, Sync Lant, all that. Down to each individual subgroup, such as, commander of destroyer groups, comm sub pack, comm sub lant, things like that. All the way down to the CEOs of the ships, to the training department heads, to the training head of each department, whether it be a senior enlisted or enlisted personnel as well, down to the individual themselves, have to take ownership and responsibility for their own training. There are things I wish I had done while I was in the Navy that I didn't do. And it's nobody's fault but my own for not following through on those. I should have pushed harder in my qualifications. I should have done things a little differently. Had I done things differently, I might have still been in the Navy right now. I could be an E7, E8, possibly even E9 right now. Um, as a matter of fact, this August, I would have been in for 19 years if I'd stayed in. So, I mean, it is what it is. I made my choices. I'm living with them. These officers have made their decisions. They're having to suffer their consequences for it. And I know I've just been repeating the same thing over and over again but it's so hard to feel like I'm driving this home and helping you understand why. Because even on a submarine, we still have a lot of the similar watch stations that the surface fleet does, albeit in a more compressed situation. I mean, when we were when we were piloting party, if you were during the piloting party, you'd have the aux forward and the auxiliary electrician forward take turns standing CIP plot, contact, what is it? Contact information plot. Which seems redundant, CIP. But basically, you were checking the bearing rate and drift of contacts. Not that hard. Bearing mark, da da da, course is this, da da da. And you're just drawing lines on a rolling sheet of paper based upon the timing of it. I mean, I don't know how things were when Dave was in. I don't know how they're doing things now. I can only relate to what I know, what I've done, and what changes I can read about. But to me, it's not to say that there weren't collisions when we were in. I mean, heck, just a few months before I got to my boat, We had the USS Greenville incident off the coast of Hawaii where they had guests aboard, and they did an emergency surface and took out a Japanese school boat. I think that's what it was. It was, duh, duh, duh. Hami Maru and the USS Greenville collision. I mean, it's just I honestly every time we had to bring that one up, that collision involving a submarine, every time we had to bring that up, just made me sick to my stomach. And that's not to say that and again, this is going to say collisions at sea happen, whether you want to or not. Um, I mean, heck, even the incident with, the USS San Francisco could have been avoided. Shortly after I got out, the USS San Francisco was going from Guam to, I think, Australia or something like that. Hit a semi-charted seamount, I guess is the best way to put it, quote, unquote. It was not on the chart that they were using, but if they had gone to a better chart to a different chart that actually had it, they would have seen it. And it's not that hard to review those charts. I mean, it gets annoying. Trust me, I know it gets annoying laying out plots and tracks. I did it. Ooh, tracing fathom curves, tracing, the area of the owned water that you own, making up the little making up the little tags that you tape to the chart, basically saying, "This is, your operating depth. This is your from this time to this time. You own this section of water." All the prep that goes into plotting out courses, to plotting out things is, well, time consuming and repetitive. But you have to be thorough at it. And I'm not saying that had I been on the San Francisco, I would have found that. I'm not saying I would have been able to stop that and prevent that from happening because I wasn't there. I don't know what kind of pressure they were under. I don't know what kind of situation they were dealing with as far as trying to get out, trying to get into get to where they needed to go. But sometimes, if it means just being a few minutes late to getting to somewhere, or a few minutes late going out and being social with your friends and shipmates, you need to take that time. And when you're at sea, where are you really going to go? I mean, from what I can tell, this all was happening from this particular. Oh, that's a page didn't want to load. But from what I can tell on the whole collision, the whole tracking, it was the latter half of their watch, mid to latter half of their watch. What were they planning on? Like, if I remember correctly, surface ships pretty much operate on a normal 24-hour day. But if you have the mid-watch, it sucks to be you. I don't know. I'm I'm just I'm just rambling at this point. I'm gonna sign off. I know I already said that once. But yeah, I'm gonna sign off and just remember, as David's always saying, ever since man made their first ship, the seas tried to kill him. Anybody that goes out to sea, there's a risk of a new and countless things that want to try and happen to your ship, whether it be um, stuck rudders, whether it be weather, or whether it just be the fact that you are overworked and tired. People need to understand that you have to be cognizant of what's going on around you. And despite the up tempo and everything, these officers should have called for help as soon as the situation got even the tiniest bit hairy. Because when you're operating in a seaport, sea lanes like that, it's better to have extra eyes up there to help you than it is to try and do things on your own. So, this is Jay's Politics Podcast, and this is just a semi-brief, but not brief segment about the special court martial. Have a great day.